Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Craig.
This is the WSU news cycle that never ends. It just goes on and on, Jeff. We thought it was over with new baseball coach, but now there's more shit to talk about, and it's just going to keep going on forever just because this is the WSU news cycle that never ends. All right, that's for all my lamb chop fans in the audience.
Yeah. It never ends because it loves podcast versus everyone. It wants us to have plenty of material to talk about.
A little bit behind the curtain, we have a shared Google Doc full of ideas of WSU things to talk about in the summer. We may never have to use any of them.
That'd be awesome. Well, I don't know. Would it be awesome?
I don't know.
Because I'm trying to think of what else.
Pretty fun.
I mean, what else could happen?
We said after the baseball coach, like, if anything happens now, it's going to be awful.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of the thought, but
like
lo
this
and
week
behold,
we have
good
like
things have happened.
Tons of good news to talk about this week.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Jeff, so this is Podcast versus Everyone. I am Craig Powers, live from the Hyatt Place Indianapolis downtown lobby, because my daughter and her mom are sleeping in our room, because we are. I'll get into why I'm here later. And with me, as always, is Jeff, who is podcasting on location in HQ East. Jeff, how you doing?
Pretty good. In order to try and compete with the ambient sound from your hotel lobby, I have children, so we're recording a little earlier than usual, since you're over there in Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight Time. We're on Daylight Time now, right? Eastern Daylight Time. My
Just
children
say Eastern time.
Yeah, Eastern time. I know. I always do that when I'm writing. If anybody ever
just go ET.
Yep. People probably never have noticed, but when I write for Coug Center and I put a time on it, I always just do PT. I'm like, I don't want to Google if it's standard time or daylight time.
I do pretty much all the football game time posts.
Yeah.
At least 90% of them, and I've never once put DT or ST because you're definitely gonna get it wrong, and then someone's gonna be like, "Whoa,
it's daylight time right now." I was like, "Oh, who cares?" So anyway,
also the S and the D are right next to each other.
That's are
just evil.
Diabolical. Anyway, my kids are still awake. So, and they're punching each other and yelling at each other. So, to compete with your ambient noise from the hotel lobby, you may get some ambient noise of brothers squealing and hitting each other. So
I basically, I came down. I'm like, I'm just gonna record from the bar, and then of course, then they have this beautiful, they have this nice outdoor patio. We're right across from the Indiana Pacers stadium. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
Something Fieldhouse. Corporate name Bankers something Fieldhouse. So
corporate
cool.
Sponsor Fieldhouse.
I got a sports vibe. It's not a Fieldhouse if it's not corporate sponsored. And then there's this fire pit out there. I'm like, it's be nice, but they got some music playing out there. Probably too loud for our listeners. And then I was like, there's a business center on the other side of the lobby. They got music. There's a speaker directly above that. So I am stationed in between the two spots, but right next to the registration desk. So they'll probably be able to hear me. And also you'll get to hear when someone checks in. And also you may get to hear when my luggage finally arrives, because it's supposed to be on its way from the airport tonight.
Is there a point where you're just going to go, okay, hold on, I got to go get my luggage? Is that going to happen during the show?
That very well could happen. And I say, just keep recording.
Just keep recording. You'll just be like, keep talking. Let me go get my luggage.
Oh no, we'll just record my interaction. But the nice thing for the airlines is that it's like a third party that delivers the luggage. So if you're mad at them, it's like they're the ones that are delivering the good news. So you can't be like, well, I have something to say to you. That saved me getting that news tonight as we were spending our second day in the mall downtown here, about ready to buy another set of clothes for the next day. Some underwear and some socks at least.
At least.
At least.
Since it's on someone else's dime, I'd certainly milk the hell out of that.
Oh yeah, we definitely were going to. I was gonna buy another set of clothes, but as I was doing that, I got the call, and I was like, honestly, I'd rather just not shop for clothes anymore. I don't really care. Like, all right, that sounds great.
I know, it's like the idea of someone else buying clothes for you sounds good until you actually have to go actually have to go clothes shopping. Then it's like, I don't care if anybody else is paying for this. Like, I don't want to do this.
And I hate malls.
Yep.
They're just miserable places.
They are filled with teenagers. Who hangs out around teenagers anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody does that by choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, except idiots.
Idiots that podcast.
Yeah.
All right, so Jeff, since you talk to teenagers all day, you're obviously drinking.
Yeah, and I only have a few days of school left.
Woo!
Yeah. Well, you know damn well what I'm drinking, Craig, so let me tell everybody about it. So Saturday night, my wife and I got to meet up with Craig and Amanda out at Beer Star, which is a local tap room out there in Tacoma. And Craig said, "Oh, I have some beer for you." So after he went and dropped off the movie at Redbox, then he ran back. I assume he ran back home to get the beer, which is just down the street from Beer Star, and came back with 2 cans of F Star Cancer, which I believe is short for Fuck Cancer.
Yeah.
IPA by Silver Moon Brewing, out of Bend. And so this is the reason why Craig thought of me. Those of you who listen who may have read Kook Center for quite a while, it's not something I talk about a whole lot anymore, because it's not really central to my life the way it was, like 4 or 5 years ago. But I have 3 boys. If you listen to the podcast, you know that I have 3 sons. My oldest one is 12. That's Joshua. My middle one is Tristan. He's about to turn 10. And then my youngest is Atticus. He's 7. Tristan, shortly before his 3rd birthday, was diagnosed with leukemia. So we went through a long and difficult battle against cancer. Well, he did. We were along for the ride. He went through the battle. And for those of you that don't know a whole lot about leukemia, he had what was called acute lymphoblastic leukemia, or ALL, which is sort of the least lethal kind of leukemia. But it is a very long and arduous treatment process. And so it was actually over 3 years of treatment, and then 3 years of putting chemo into his body, stuff like that, which of course is never good. So now we're dealing with sort of the fallout from that, different sort of physical developments, delays, things like that. But he's very much alive, and we are very thankful for the doctors that were able to help him get past his cancer. And this particular beer, the proceeds from it go to cancer research and cancer prevention and things like that. And so I am proudly drinking the F Cancer beer tonight out of thankfulness for the life of my son. And he is, despite some of the physical limitations that he's got, which aren't major, but just sort of coordination issues, muscle issues, things like that, he is otherwise a thriving, intelligent, bright, delightful boy. And I'm very thankful that he's still with us.
Can confirm all the adjectives for your son. Of course, Tristan is a wonderful kid. I'd say even a uniquely bright personality, especially considering what he's went through in his short life so far. So, obviously you came to mind as a fellow craft beer drinker and someone who knows,
cancer hater.
Yeah, and cancer hater, who knows the full brunt of it all. I won't say the full brunt, but you definitely met some.
Yeah, we do have friends.
Way, so
we do have friends who weren't quite as fortunate as we were. So
so you do know the full brunt and the full experience, and fuck cancer. Out of 5 of those, how would you rate that IPA you have there, Jeff?
5, because Because
Go buy all of it.
that's
Actually,
right.
truthfully, it has sold really well. There was
Yeah.
only 3 cans of it at Pine Defiance, and
Yep.
when I picked it up, I kept one for myself and gave you the other two.
Yeah. Well, and I
Uh,
think that, cancer is one of those things that sort of touches everyone in some way. Obviously, not everybody has a kid, but, I mean, most people, I think, either know someone or have a family member or whatever. A staff member at my school right now has moved to Seattle temporarily to receive treatment for cancer. So anyway, I think most of us know someone who's had to deal with it. So yeah, buy it all, buy all of it as much
yeah,
as you can.
absolutely. Um, so yeah, that's. I'm glad you're drinking that one. Glad you're enjoying it. You have any tasting notes you can throw on top of that guy?
It's a pretty hoppy kind of standard West Coast IPA type style. So, fairly amber in color, and it's got those IBUs ramped up. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
would think,
it's just like that.
the price point on it was pretty like low, like these days.
Yeah.
It was like $2 a can, like, but it was. I would think like to maximize, money you're donating, you'd want to, not make this like expensive malt, and you'd make a recipe, and a recipe where the hops are easy to come by and not so
Yep.
expensive, and so yeah, it's kind of what
Yep.
we expect.
Yep. It's good.
Um,
It's good standard, just solid IPA.
it's comfort.
That's 5 whatevers.
Yeah. Great. So
What'd you find? What kind of weirdness did you come up with?
yeah, earlier today, I'm in like a travel beer group, or like in a Facebook group that's all about giving people tips on where to go to find good craft beer. And turns out one of the places people have recommended was just a liquor store about 4 blocks from my hotel. So I was able to go down there. They actually had a nice selection. I picked up some Driefontein and Tilken Lambic, which like was not expecting. I picked up this from Black Acre Brewing, I believe out of Indy. It was with all the Indianapolis. It's American Pale Lager, which I got because I was like, oh, whatever. It's like they're making like a Coors Light style beer. Didn't even read the label. And then I look at it. It's like heavily Citra dry hopped with like tons of like it's just, and it's awesome. Like it's refreshing. It's got a good nose to it. But anyways, that's my sidecar beer. I got a couple of those sitting next to me right now. I was enjoying one before the podcast, but the beer I am having is from a brewery called Central State Brewing. They call this beer a Midwest exotic, which I like.
Ooh. I don't know. How many exotic things are there in the Midwest?
I
guess
don't
we'll
know.
talk about that later.
That's a good question. Yeah, exactly. So this is from their research and development series. It's got a very research and development look to it. It's like old school typewriter font, and it's called Barrel Aged Bashi or Bashi, who knows, Bashi. The style farmhouse barley wine style ale aged in wine and bourbon barrels. So obviously I drink a lot of barley wines and of that nature on this podcast, because I drink a lot of barley wines and of that nature in life. But this was what reached out to me here was the farmhouse element. And I was like, Alex, I want something weird, I wanted to going to Indianapolis and just find the weirdest sounding beer I could pick up from the shelf, not because I could have just done some standard IPA, and that's boring. But yeah, this is I actually saw this when Central State has a bar which comes up as the most recommended among beer nerds beer bar to go to in the city, and they call it Coolship, spelled KOELSCHIP, which is the Dutch it's the term for the fermentation, the vessel that's used for inoculating lambic with um, basically yeast from the air. So as I've talked about before on this podcast, lambic beer in Belgium is spontaneously fermented with yeast from the air, and so they named their bar after this. So I knew they must have been doing some interesting things. I hope to hit up that bar. I have a couple more nights here after this, so I'm hoping to get there at some point. But I saw this on their list, and I was like, that sounds something very interesting. And lo and behold, I was at that liquor store, and I spotted it, and I was like, oh, that sounds very interesting. So yeah, it's definitely a barley wine. Like there's no, like I was kind of worried it would be some barley wine that they accidentally soured, and they were just like, oh, we're calling it a farmhouse barley wine, but it's definitely not sour. Like it's, I think really the farmhouse element comes from the wine barrel. I'm sure they pitched, because I've noticed all their beers are farmhouse style, so they probably pitched some, bread or something into it. I'm not getting much of that though, and it didn't have like a fizz that I would have expected from like something with that. So it might not really even have the elements. The wine barrel, it's a wine and bourbon barrels, and they blended them. The wine barrel is definitely prevalent and definitely giving it a sort of unique element. It's a little lighter than some of the barley wines I drink. Still very heavy. It's 10.5%. But I gotta tell you, like it's got a nice nose. It's definitely unique in its approach and taste but the mouthfeel's there. Like I expected it to be this like thin thing because it'd be thinned out by some like wild yeast or whatever. I'm sorry if people are talking very loudly because I am at a hotel.
Can still totally hear you. No worries.
Yeah, that's good. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. Like it's actually pretty easy to drink for a barley wine. Like it's not too sweet, but it does have some sweetness. It does have some of those like caramel type elements you'd expect from a barley wine. It has the color, it has the the viscosity, but it's like quite easy to drink. And I'm having probably it was only in the fridge for about an hour. An interesting thing. So in the state of Indiana has had many odd beer laws. So I'll get into this at this point, but I'll talk more about this in a bit. But they have a rule where grocery stores and convenience stores and gas stations can't sell their beer cold. And the idea behind it was then so people couldn't open it on the way home. So this liquor store actually
just be so tempting if it's
liquor
cold.
Stores can still sell them cold to go. So, but no one would ever do that going home from a liquor store. Just a convenience store, or whatever. And the liquor store is open late, just like so it doesn't make any sense. But so I was able to pick these pale lagers. This one, not if I was them, I wouldn't waste cooler space on it because it's a barley wine. So it just chilled. So it's a nice temperature right now, and it's very nice. Out of it's been a rep. Okay, out of so there's probably maybe the best thing about Indianapolis, and I'll get into this later, is their children's museum.
Ooh.
And so out of 5 children's they actually have the URL childrensmuseum.org. That is how big they are.
Really?
Yeah.
That's actually really impressive.
Yeah. So I'll talk about that a little later when I come to the redemption part for Indianapolis. But teaser.
Teaser.
Yeah. Spoilers are overrated, as we talked about earlier. Out of 5 children's museums, you use quarters a lot. I'll use a quarter. I'll give it 4.25.
There you go.
It's pretty damn tasty. It's better than I expected, honestly. Like I was like, I'm just getting this weird ass beer. It's probably gonna be a mess, but it's really good. I really like it. Well done, Central State. Well done, Indianapolis.
Good job.
And well done
Indiana.
this other beer that I'm drinking from Indianapolis. Like, fuck, man. They make good beer everywhere.
It's nice. That's the beauty of beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Good
All
beer
right,
everywhere.
man. So we have good reason to drink in happiness tonight.
Right?
Um, uh, we have mourned the expected departure of Marvin Cannon before, and we've talked about how he could be under Kyle Smith a lot, but we're going to do it again because
Yeah.
Marvin Cannon, and
Because now
I
he's
hope
back.
he's back, and of course I hope this is a good thing for him. But he's back. He showed up on the roster. Jeff, you got confirmation from your trusty source, and
Yeah.
and now we know officially Marvin Cannon's coming back, which is a roster that was very light on experience, gets an experienced player back, and then also one of the top, one of the actual Pac-12 level players that we had last season. So that's great.
Yeah, like he's a guy who's is fairly exciting. One of the things I kind of love about the potential of him being back is he really is. Well, number one, we know Kyle Smith is going to emphasize defense. Like we know that for a fact. We know that his number one sort of issue with the team when he showed up was how poor the defense was. He said that right away. He said the Ken Palm number. He's like, they were 297th or whatever, in defense, and said, we got to fix that. We got to fix that right away. And Marvin Cannon is, I think, really the only guy on the roster who has the potential to be sort of a game-changing defensive player.
Absolutely.
I think there are plenty of other guys who can be good defensive players. In particular, I think CJ Ellaby could be really, really good. He's a high effort, high motor guy. So I think he could be a really excellent defender. But Cannon, there's something special about him. I mean, even in the middle of last season's, total debacle of a defense, he made some special plays, particularly recovering and blocking shots. He's long, he's quick, he gets off the floor quickly. He's just a guy who can be disruptive. And when I interviewed Kyle Smith back, a couple months ago when I was in Pullman, and this was when Marvin Cannon was still on the roster and sort of 100% bought in. He said, look, I told Marvin Cannon, I want you to be our Kyle Weaver. And, I don't think that was a reference to his offense, right? Because there's not a lot similar about what Cannon does offensively with what Weaver did offensively, where Weaver was sort of a
point forward.
Really a point forward or an oversized point guard. Definitely excellent ball handler, really good passer, not a great shooter, that kind of stuff. Just real crafty and savvy. Cannon he's a slasher. And an explosive player, just a very different kind of offensive player. But defensively, I think, he sees some similarity. There's similar size. Maybe Cannon might be a little shorter, certainly maybe a little less strong. But, the kind of guy with the kind of wingspan who ought to be able to guard a number of different positions and just be a real disruptive force. And so I think that he's a guy who could be a centerpiece, even if he's only scoring 10 points a game or whatever. I mean, I don't know what his offensive upside really is. And, maybe you have some thoughts on that. I tend to think that he's the kind of guy who might be hurt a little bit by the 3-point line going back because the stroke's a little shaky, but, and he's more of an opportunistic scorer. He kind of feeds off the space that's vacated by other people. So he doesn't really create for himself. So, I don't know what the ceiling is as far as scoring goes, but I do know that I firmly believe that Kyle Smith can make him into if he wants to work that hard, into a stopper on defense. And I think the indications are he's a great kid who works hard, and I think he'll adapt to that. So, all in all, adding a guy who can be a transformative defensive player to a team that's really going to emphasize defense, is totally huge. And he obviously brings an athletic element that, I think the athletic gap, I think the gap in athleticism from the top of the roster to the bottom of the roster is smaller than it was a year ago. No matter what, Coug fans said over all of last year about how long and athletic the team was. I think that gap has definitely been closed this year, but Cannon is still, in that upper area as far as athleticism goes. And so, yeah, all around, it's awesome that he's back. I know the men's basketball staff is excited to have him back. And one of the interesting things that my source told me was that, that I kind of asked, did he have to get re-recruited? Is that kind of how this came about? And I said that, basically that Cannon sort of looked around and ultimately just decided that, Wazoo was the best place for him. And I think that's a really good way to make sure that a guy is bought in, that he wants to be there and that it's not because he doesn't really have any other options. So yeah, all around great deal.
Yeah. And, just speaking a little bit to his offensive capability, we've talked about this before, and the ability to draw fouls and get to the free throw line is huge. We don't have another guy coming back that was particularly good at that outside of Cannon.
Yeah.
You need someone that can do that, and he converted the free throws at a really high rate last year. Maybe he won't always be able to do that, but
maybe unsustainably high,
but yeah,
still.
especially during conference play. But I think his true form could be around 80% for sure, because he's very consistent in his stroke. It's not the prettiest stroke, but it's consistent, and he's consistent in his approach at the line, and that's, as anybody that's played any amount of basketball knows, that's the most important thing, unless you're Shaquille O'Neal. The other, I totally agree with you on the 3-point line. I'd be interesting to see like a Kirk Goldsberry style, heat map of where his shots were. I'm pretty sure most of his threes were right up against the line, in the corner or at the wing. He didn't take very many of them. 54 is not a lot, especially in, when you have guys hucking everything they see. And his percentage, he was pretty high at one point, and as the season went on, he was not hitting them very often. So he ended up at 33%. That's unfortunately that's not a huge part of his game. One thing that we could say this about any player is Kyle Smith is going to be more thoughtful about where his players are on the floor offensively. I think that he probably has an idea of how he wants to use Marvin on offense, and he's looking at the same data that we are. And so he knows what his strengths are, and he knows what his limitations are. And I'm sure he's watched a ton of film on him at this point too. So I'm confident that, in his Princeton style or whatever offense he's going to run, he'll find a good spot for Marvin. Because really, honestly, Marvin's not going to be your first, second, or even a lot of times, third option on the floor. He's going to be most of his value is going to come from offensive rebounding or just slashing, drawing a foul, making just enough jump shots to keep people honest. He's not going to be carrying the load like Ellaby will, or like some of the guys that we have coming in are more expected to do. But yeah, this is fucking fantastic. I'm so stoked. This makes the team honestly a lot better. Just having him on back fills a gap that wasn't there, that we didn't really have filled in a lot of different places, like you said, as a defensively, in terms of aggressive offense and getting to the line. Yeah, this is an exciting poll. It makes the starting five for next year that much better, and then in turn makes the bench that much better. So just to have a guy who has a year of Pac-12 experience under his belt is something that will be rare next year as well. So it's just nice to, this is excellent news, way better news than I expected in late June.
Yeah, if he hadn't come back, so here's sort of my projected starting five, and This is, I think, pretty fluid, partially because there are so many new players, and then partially because Kyle Smith makes his decisions on this sort of stuff based off of, the nerd ball system that we've sort of hashed and rehashed and rehashed. The idea that, how you perform in practice is how you are judged, and that's what determines playing time, right? So you get scored on the things that you do. So I think there's a little bit of guesswork here, but I have a hard time believing Cannon's not one of the starters. And so if he is, my early thought about the starting five is that Isaac Bonton, the JUCO transfer, becomes the starting point guard. Cannon starting at the 2, CJ Ellaby starting at the 3, Deion James, the grad transfer, starting at the 4, and Jeff Pollard starting at the 5. And that's a very small lineup because Deion James is only 6'6", but his skill set is really that of a 4. And then Pollard, obviously at 6'9", is smallish for a center, but his skill set is that of a center. So, it'll be interesting to see how they do that. He does have some nice pieces he can mix and match just a little bit. Just because, you got Markovetsky coming off the bench. He's a 7-footer. You got some other guys you can kind of mix in there. Kuntz you could mix in at a forward spot. So there's some pieces he can move around there. But kind of to what I was kind of trying to point out was, it was kind of what you're saying is, if he hadn't come back, you're looking at maybe something like, Bonton playing the 2, and then maybe like Jervay Robinson starting at point guard, or maybe you've got Bonton starting at point guard, Ellaby sliding over to shooting guard, and then maybe a small forward of like, Darren Henson or Kuntz or somebody like that. I just think the setup is a lot nicer and a lot smoother. You got a nice little lineup with Bonton, Cannon, and Ellaby on the perimeter. That facilitates Smith's desire to have 2 ball handlers, because you'll have Bonton and Ellaby. Cannon's not really a ball handler, but those 2 guys can certainly handle it. Cannon can work off the ball a little bit within that modified Princeton that Kyle Smith runs. James is certainly a serviceable offensive player. And then you've got Pollard to kind of work in the high post and set screens and things like that. So, it's just, it's sort of like when you think about baseball and you've got 5 starters and you lose like your number 3 starter. It's like, you don't normally think of, oh man, we've lost the number 3 starter. That guy was so great. It's kind of more like, well, now who's your 5th starter, right? Some guy who doesn't belong in a major league rotation. Not that necessarily that's an apples to apples comparison, but when you took Cannon off that roster, it was pretty tough for Smith to come up with a guy that was going to be able to replace that. And through recruiting, he really didn't find a guy who could replace that. And so getting Cannon back maybe is as big of a recruiting win as he could have had.
Yeah. And so hooray, Marvin Cannon. Happy to have you back. 2 more years. Yeah.
So dunks, blocks, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, honestly, he's an exciting player. He's exciting to watch,
he's
and
fun.
It's nice to have players like he provided most of the, him and Franks occasionally and Ellaby occasionally, like provided most of the exciting moments in a otherwise awful season.
Never underestimate the value of fun.
Yeah. Hey, that's why everyone loved the tip dunks.
That's right.
From Marcus Capers, man.
That's right.
Marcus
Even
Capers,
though he wasn't a very good player.
Yeah. He hit 2 jumpers against St. Mary's, so.
Yeah, that one time.
But so while on topic of basketball, we can talk about the fact that Kyle Smith has secured his first commitment for the 2021.
2021.
So we currently, Marvin Cannon's coming back. Technically, you kind of consider him in the 2019 class, since he was going to transfer, and it seemed like to the point where they took him off the roster, like they thought he was gone.
No, he was off the right. Listen, my source told me like he's gone, like he was done. So.
Yeah. But he's back. So 2019 class, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, 2021. So not next year's class. The year after. So he wouldn't play for WSU. He's not. I mean, if he eventually signs, of course, he could be like Klay Thompson and just stay with the commitment for that many years, and so he wouldn't be playing until October of 2021. You wouldn't see him in a basketball game, so for WSU.
Yeah.
So don't get too excited here. But Jeff, one thing that stuck out to me that I said, truthfully, this is Podcast versus Everyone. You shouldn't expect anything less. I did very little research on this guy, but Jeff, of course, wrote a post for Coug Center on his commitment. So had to do research because we have high standards at Coug Center, unlike at Podcast versus Everyone. Jeff, the thing that you said on our Coug Center Slack is that he could have played for WSU last season.
Yeah. That might have been a little bit of an exaggeration, but no, so basically his deal is this. He's a 6'7", 240-ish pound forward. And he's a sophomore, as you mentioned, but very athletic. There's not a lot of highlights out there on him. He's not rated yet. Like, he doesn't have any stars. So
yeah, sophomores generally aren't.
Yeah, no.
Unless they're like Zion Williamson.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're like a top,
or even Zion Williamson wasn't
25 kid. Yeah. So, so not rated by the recruiting services yet, but extremely athletic kid. The limited video that's out there on him is pretty impressive. Obviously it's sort of, if you go to the Coug Center and read our story, it's basically just clips from Twitter that he had retweeted. By the way, the kid's name is, hold on, I want to make sure to get it right here. Nathan Rollins, and I don't know how to pronounce the second half of his last name, but I'm going to guess on Kabongi.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah. So Nathan Rollins Kabongi, or maybe we're just going to call him NRK for short. Maybe Kabanj. I don't know. Somebody's going to have to
make sure NRK doesn't have some terrible. I'm going to look up NRK.
That's true. You better look up NRK while I'm talking. So, okay. So, he's a kid who is, like I said, extremely athletic. He actually does have a profile on 24/7 as a football player. So he's apparently a defensive end for his team too. He goes to Thomas Jefferson High School in Portland. But yeah, the clips that he put up on his timeline that I put into my story, some dunks, some blocks, just really athletic, and you would not guess that he's a sophomore from looking at him. Already pretty strong, already pretty good with his feet. I would guess that his best basketball is far ahead of him. So that's all the good news. You did mention, like, if he stays committed. So kind of here's the deal. He picked up his first Division I offer about 6 weeks ago from Portland State. He picked up his second Division I offer sometime in the last couple weeks from Wazoo. Took an unofficial up to Pullman, loved it, decided to commit. So, we'll see.
We'll see. He is the very first kid in the 2021 class from Oregon to commit. So, like, by the way, NRK, the very first thing that comes up, an abbreviation of the Norwegian Norsk Rikskringkasting AS, generally expressed in English as the Norwegian Broadcasting Corporation.
Oh, well.
That's
not too bad.
It's the Norwegian government-owned radio and television public broadcasting company.
Well, see, so that's not offensive. That's far from offensive.
So the closest would be like PBS here, but that's not government-owned. It's government-funded. But
right. Despite what the Republicans want you to believe. Anyhow.
But yeah, so maybe it's just straight up like basic like access.
Might
channel.
Be. That would be funny.
Let's do no research and assume that's what.
Yeah.
Like Wayne's World type shows.
All right. So now his new nickname already is Public Access. We're just gonna call him Public Access.
It's like shows about. It's just shows about like guys, like cross country skiing to work.
Yeah.
And they're giving you tips on the best routes in cross country skiing to work. And the best waxes to use, the best goggles. I don't know. I've went cross country skiing like once or twice. I've tapped out all my knowledge there, so I can't go with that bit anymore. But But yeah,
But
so
I will say this, that I think that the significant part here, look, listen, if the kid doesn't stay committed, whatever. I mean, I get it. Like we've established, I work with teenagers all day. They change their minds all the time. So I get it. But I think that the bigger deal is that, the kid took an unofficial visit up to Pullman, and Smith was able to sell him on his vision of the program. And this is a kid who, I'm telling you, if you go watch the highlights, I mean, this is not Tony Bennett getting a commitment from Nick Witherell. Like this is not that. I mean, this kid can play. He's clearly got, the athleticism that's required. And look, I haven't watched him play in a full basketball game, so I'm not gonna make any grand sweeping judgments about what he actually can and can't do on a basketball court. But the highlights are such that they suggest that this is a kid with a lot of potential. It's a kid that Wazoo obviously felt like they needed to get in early on. Which I think is, honestly something you need to do if you're going to be the coach of Washington State. You better get in on a guy early, you better offer him early. And then you better just, stay on him and hope that, the commitment to the recruiting pays off. And I think that's something that you learn, when you're the coach at St. Mary's, or, an assistant coach at St. Mary's, when you're the head coach at Columbia, when you're the head coach at San Francisco. It's kind of how you have to do business. If you're going to sneak in and get some of those guys, you got to get on them early, and you got to be on them all the time and hope that they want to be with you and be maybe a stud with you, as opposed to being, the ninth guy for somebody else who kind of maybe doesn't want him as much as you do. So even if he doesn't stick, I think that says a lot about what Smith was able to do to convince him, to show him what his program is all about. And I think when you look at this recruiting class, the current one, it's the same deal. You just kind of go, look, I mean, this guy had a couple months to put this together. For the most part, these are not guys he was recruiting while he was at San Francisco. Most of these guys are kids who, he was sort of picking up the phone and working the phones and seeing who he could land. And I think you can look at this class and say, and obviously it's greater in number than anything Kent signed other than his first class. But I think just when you look at the overall quality, I think it's certainly higher quality than anything Kent put together, and he did it in a couple months. So, and I will say, from talking to Smith, and then, many of you who listen to the podcast have obviously listened to Smith talk. He really is the real deal. It's really that genuine. His enthusiasm is infectious, and it's not a fake enthusiasm. Like he truly, it's genuine. It's not like the fake enthusiasm of the previous coach, who is, one of our authors, PJ Kendall, likes to refer to as the snake oil salesman, right? Like Kent was like that. With Smith, you just get a sense that he is just that fired up about everything. And it's hard not to want to get on the bus with him and go wherever he's going. And I think I think these recruits are showing that as well.
Absolutely. So Jeff, what I should have been doing while you were talking was looking up more on Nathan Rollins Kibongi, but instead I've been looking at more on NRK. So do you think Nathan can be as dynamic as the original NRK, which is basically a combination of NPR and PBS? They do radio and television, and they've been doing it since 1933. Like, they're just, and they switched to digital radio, doing they're a powerhouse in Norway. Norwegian way.
They're a powerhouse in Norwegian.
Well,
yeah,
in the language of Norwegian, they are a powerhouse.
That is true.
I bet
they are physically
strong
and they dunk on people, then yeah.
I would hope they dunk on some folks sometimes. I don't know what Norwegian politics is like.
Yeah. Or what the colloquial expression for dunk on is in Norwegian. But
what I'm saying is, he's got a lot to live up to if we're going to give him the NRK nickname.
Yeah, he really does. But I'm confident that he can develop into that kind of a force for sure.
Random question, Jeff.
Yeah.
So sorry. Text
I was
about
like, is the
text
question
text
forthcoming?
question from my significant other about
Yeah.
have the bags came yet?
Yeah.
Because she has to have something to wear to her conference tomorrow.
Uh-oh.
They have not.
They have not.
By the way. So NRK being both the government-owned with 3 national TV channels, 3 national radio channels in Norway, in Norwegia. How many employees do you think they have as
Ooh.
of 2017?
Okay. So say that again. How many what?
3 national TV channels, 3
Okay.
national radio channels. How many employees do you think they have?
500.
I thought you were going to go way over.
Am I close?
Oh, I see my bags. Those are my bags.
Oh, the bags are here.
Those are mine. Yeah.
This is live
Craig
radio.
Powers. Sorry, did no one answer at the room? Sorry, this is great podcasting.
This is a great podcast right here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've signed something.
This is fantastic. I don't know. Should I tell a joke or something?
Sign. Print.
Oh wait, let me see. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I could tell a dad joke.
All right, thank you so much.
Joke book. Where's my dad joke book? Okay, hold on. While we're waiting for Craig, I'm going to tell a dad joke. Here we go. My wife got me a dad joke book for Christmas. What did the dad say when the sink was full of dirty plates? Dish is a real mess.
God.
What happened at the emotional wedding? Cake was in tears. Get it? Tears.
Damn it, Jeff. You know what the most...
Wait. One more. Why did the foul-mouthed nun get expelled?
I don't know.
Because of her dirty habit.
Wait, but what would she get expelled? You mean excommunicated?
Yeah, whatever. Expelled from the... Whatever. Just don't... Craig, don't overthink it. Why does Waldo wear a striped shirt?
I don't know, because he's skinny, and instead of wanting to be thinned out, he wants to be widened.
Because he doesn't want to be spotted.
Okay, that's enough, Jeff. So,
all right, back to podcasting.
We have clothes.
You got your bags.
Underwear.
Good. Alaska is spared from buying you a $1,000 tailored suit.
Yeah, because I do have to go to a wedding, and
That's
I definitely would have went that route. Not the $200 express suit.
No.
I would have went
you would not have gone to Men's Warehouse.
No. Yeah,
nope.
That would have, even though my friend's wedding is like business casual, it would have suddenly become like white tie. I'd have to get like, no, not white tie, but like, no, speaking of white tie, we could talk about that.
We could talk about that.
But it's one of the least interesting things. So one of the most important things is I bought a bunch of beers from a brewery called Casa Agria Specialty Ales in California. They've made different beers specifically for people they know or people that work for the brewery 3 different times called wedding saisons, and they each have different fruits. And they have actually reproduced them and sold them commercially. So when friends get married now, I like to give them one of the wedding saisons that I have. And so I was like kind of worried that that wedding saison, because that was the one thing that I could not replace.
Right.
Just making sure that the old SO doesn't want me to bring things up right now. Okay, so I'll read the podcast. This is live podcasting. Perfect. Are you podcasting? B is finally asleep, so no need to come in any earlier than necessary. Basically, she's saying, stay the fuck away.
Stay away.
Don't wake her up.
Don't you dare wake up the kid. Please, stay downstairs and drink all night. Just don't wake the kid up. Find a hooker if you need to. Just don't come up here.
Yeah. Anyways, so that was one of our better segments.
Yeah. And by the way, the WSU recruiting news is not done. We got more good recruiting news.
We still have another WSU thing.
I know.
That's
Isn't
why,
that
like,
great?
I wish it would have come, like, the bags would have come a little bit later.
Yeah,
But
that's
anyway,
bad timing, Alaska.
so very, very good news in the football realm. The Cougs landed a this year commitment, like eligible to play immediately, from Dion McIntosh. Not a commitment, just signed, straight up signed, right? Or yeah, whatever. I mean, he should be signing.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sure he signed financial aid paperwork that
yeah,
nobody knew about, and then um, and then he showed up for summer classes. So
yeah. So yeah, he's on campus. He'll be ready to go for fall. They call it fall campus in August, but whatever. But yeah. So Dion McIntosh, former Notre Dame guy, actually played for Notre Dame. Had significant playing time in 2017. Spent last year at a community college. Uh, um, and now he is at WSU in a position, really the one position that WSU was lacking above all else, despite having one of its best players as the top position. But at running back, obviously Max Borghi at the top is stellar. But really, after that, you had some freshmen coming in, and you had a converted linebacker in Cole Dubats, who, as fun as he was to watch at the spring game, I think we all knew wasn't a full season solution. But Jeff, yeah, so what are your impressions outside of obviously needed depth, but what else on this McIntosh kid?
I think he's awesome. I don't know why he was still available.
Yeah, that seems really.
Yeah, so my guess is, I mean, look, it's all speculation. It's just a podcast. That's sort of how we roll, right?
Speculator die, baby.
Yeah, I mean, given that most junior college kids will sign early, many of them will enroll in second semester. And so for a kid who was at Notre Dame for 2 years, who then spent a year at a junior college, you would think he would have pretty easily had that AA midway through the year. Like, you would think that that's probably what would happen.
Well, you think you would have had at least 24 credits, like 12 a semester from Notre Dame, but you would think
you would think. So, yeah. So you would think that would be the case. Now, granted, he was removed from the team in early January of 2018. So, I mean,
you didn't get that second semester.
Yeah, there's a chance, and I don't know if I have no idea if Notre Dame is on quarters or semesters. So, whatever. I mean, there's a chance that he missed one, maybe even.
I'm going to find out.
He might have missed, if they were on quarters, he might have missed two quarters in Notre Dame if he had left right at that point. So who knows? But the point is that you would think that after a redshirt year at Notre Dame plus at least one summer plus at least one quarter, that he would have been able to then, after 1 or 2 quarters or a semester
So Notre Dame is definitely on semesters.
Okay.
Because they go by spring, summer, and fall. So
okay, so there you go. So after a redshirt year and at least one semester plus another semester and or quarter at junior college, you would think that would have been enough for an associate's.
Right.
So just sort of like reading all of that, I would guess maybe we're dealing with a kid who was sort of struggling to get his academics fully in order, which is sort of crazy considering he was at Notre Dame. But, as we know, football players can sort of make all sorts of miracles happen. So and he was a kid who didn't have any reported offers in this recruiting cycle, which was extremely strange considering he ran for almost 1,200 yards on one of the better community college football teams in the country and was a second team junior college All-American. So something wasn't quite adding up there for him to fly under the radar that.
Yeah, as his one season at Notre Dame in 7 games, he 5 yards a carry, really 500 yards, 7 touchdowns. Like he was like 7 touchdowns in 7 games. Like he was a core piece of what they were doing. So
Yep. Yep. He, I guess the way it went down just from, reading up on Notre Dame coverage at the time, it seems like they kind of had some injuries, and he stepped into an opportunity and played really great. So, and he had a huge game against North Carolina. Now, North Carolina wasn't, really all that good, but still, he had 100 and some yards on like 12 carries or something like that and a couple touchdowns. So, including a couple of the runs that we highlighted in our story. So, definitely talented, definitely can play at this level. He's obviously going to be behind Borghi, which, is fine. But, instead of, thinking of Max Borghi potentially getting injured because he is overstressed, because your next best option is Cole, because that's what really we were looking at, right? If your next best option is Cole Dubois, converted linebacker, or Jameer Thomas, true freshman, or Jovenzli Bazile, true freshman, chances are good that Borghi was going to play more than he probably should. And so what this does is this definitely lets you feel comfortable and say, okay, look, Borghi doesn't have to play, 3/4 of the snaps. He can go back. We can go to a situation like we had, last year and last year in particular where, James Williams was getting about 2/3 of the snaps or 60% of the snaps. And the second guy was getting the other, 33 to 40%. And this guy certainly looks capable of playing that 1/3 to 40% of the snaps that would be available for the backup. It's exciting. There's a play against North Carolina where, he takes on a safety one-on-one and it just makes him whiff, makes you feel pretty good. So I'm excited. This is a huge addition to the team, presuming, whatever it was that kept him from being highly recruited, out of junior college doesn't pop up.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys that have made multiple moves in their career, you always kind of have to keep that in mind, and just hope for the best. But this is just sorely needed running back depth. Otherwise, we were having true freshmen or Cole Dubois playing like a significant number of snaps next year. Yep. And to have a guy who is high level FBS proven and has the and he's a senior and he has the body to withstand it, and it's just it's great to have, and hopefully he can be as solid as he has been in his other stops, and that'll be a great addition. And honestly, expecting a bit of a jump from Max, given that he was a true freshman and a very young true freshman, we could have just as good a running back play overall this year as we had last year. So, like you said in your article, there aren't a lot of glaring deficiencies on this team coming up this year, which I don't know how many WSU teams you've ever gone into your life saying that, but they really aren't. Obviously, there's a question at quarterback, but I think we're pretty confident that any of the three guys that it might be are probably going to be fine, and maybe not Gardner Minshew, but just fine. But most of the other positions, we feel pretty good about, especially on offense. The offense now, this just makes an offense that where we thought, had almost endless weapons, is you just added another one for whoever's going to play quarterback. So it's pretty exciting.
And I think there's actually a pretty reasonable chance that Borghi has a bigger year than Williams had last year. He's, I don't know, by some metrics you could look at and say, Borghi already had a better year last year than Williams just with fewer touches. I think it's not a stretch to say that Borghi was the better runner. Williams was maybe the better pass catcher and more elusive in the open field. But just as a running back, I think it seemed like Borghi was pretty clearly the better runner. So I think there's a chance that we could end up getting more production, particularly out of the running game this year, with those two guys than what we got with the combination of, junior level Williams plus freshman Borghi. I think that sophomore Borghi plus redshirt junior, former Notre Dame running back, Deion McIntosh. I think I don't know, like it's easy to be optimistic this time of year, right? And be like, oh, we could be better. But I really do believe that. I really do think that with the improvement that you mentioned with Borghi plus what McIntosh brings to the table, I think that it's not totally crazy to think that that the running attack, that the running backs could be even more of a position of strength this year than they were last year.
So just to confirm, does he comes in with 2 years of eligibility, or is
Yeah,
it
he'll have 2 years of eligibility. So he redshirted for a year at Notre Dame, played for a year, and then played his redshirt sophomore year last year at the junior college. So yeah, he's got 2 years to play too.
Yeah, given that our next level of running backs are true freshmen, that's huge. To have, knowing Borghi, like I don't think Borghi's bounced into the NFL after his sophomore season, and then because he's just because of his size, honestly, and just to know that we can have those two for the next 2 years if this works out, it makes you feel a hell of a lot better about that position, which WSU has had a lot of bad luck with in terms of people transferring, and after being so unbelievably stacked there 2 years ago, to being this year, like we thought it was just gonna be Max and whoever else. Like it's pretty great, and I don't know, that this optimism, it makes me uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, you gotta, at some point you got to embrace it, right?
Yeah,
because it's like, I mean, we just read the Bill Connolly from SB Nation did his preview. I mean, we just read that, and he talked about how the program has improved via his ranking system for 4 consecutive years, which is really, really unusual. Almost no program does that. So at some point you just sort of have to embrace the magic of Mike Leach and just say, this is sort of the deal. I mean, I know there's a point at which they're not necessarily
there's a ceiling, right?
There's a ceiling, but man, it's when it comes to just being optimistic and thinking, man, could this be better? I mean, I don't know, like, could the offense be better? It could, I really think it
definitely.
could.
Like it could be better. If you look at some of his Texas Tech teams, we've not touched that level yet.
And if Gabrut is the quarterback,
we've not touched Graham Harrell. Level
no,
yet.
We haven't. Well, let me say we did actually briefly. And that was when Halliday's senior season.
Yeah.
We were doing
That's
that
true.
kind of
but
that
the defense
kind of
was,
air rating.
The defense was,
of course, the defense was horrendous.
But the defense has been since 2015. The defense has, since Alex Grinch came on, and then continuing with Tracy Claeys, the defense has been at the very least average, and so or slightly below at times.
Right.
But not harmfully bad.
Right.
Like so.
Right.
So yeah, I think probably he's had some better defenses at WSU than he ever had at Texas Tech, and whatever Connolly's numbers say, given what they're facing now, I sometimes I wonder on his adjustments on later years and whatever, but that's a conversation for a different day. I'll give this. Bill's, if you haven't read them, he does a multi-thousand-word preview for every single team in the FCS.
And it is impressive.
Single team. And the level of detail that he goes into. Like, so if you're reading WSU 1, and he does not mention Lamont McDougal, which is a pretty glaring error.
Yeah.
But I will say, and Jeff, you might confirm this as well, like we've both written mass previews for, like for College Basketball Prospectus and ESPN, I previewed like 30 different teams multiple times. And when you're doing that, like, and Connolly's, what is it, 128 teams or something now? What is it at? Where we're at?
It's more than that, I think, isn't it?
So he's doing that every single team, down to like Texas State and shit like that. Like, and he, but I know those kind of traditional transfers, those sit out of year transfers that seem weird now, like because we have the grad transfers so often. Those are the easy ones to miss. and to forget about or not think about, or they're really hard to kind of, because they've sat out that year and because you've seen guys sit out a year and have a really hard time adjusting in that year back. It's hard to kind of assign any significance either way to their addition. And so it's also really easy to forget about them, because when you're writing these previews, you're looking at the guys that are coming back and you're looking at the recruits that are coming in. And if you're looking at, the most recent recruiting class, the guys that transferred in the year before are not on that. So like it can be something you can miss. Jeff just opened another beer.
Hell yes, I did.
But yeah, it'd be something you can miss, and I don't blame him. I think those previews are excellent.
It's amazing he doesn't miss more.
Yeah,
write with the level of detail that he does. And look, you and I were doing basketball. Yeah. Like we only got to keep track of like 13 guys.
12 or 13 guys. Well,
and he's got to keep track of.
It was like 8.
Yeah, that's true. So it's like, this guy, he's doing all the teams, and we were doing like a couple of conferences, right? He's doing all the teams, 85 scholarship players plus walk-ons, and because as we know, some schools actually use walk-ons. It's actually really remarkable he doesn't miss more. So he is really the only national writer I've ever read who is like, when he does these previews, I think to myself like, man, this is as good as a local writer could have done. Like, really does do a great job.
If I was to write the preview, like I read it and I usually think of that, like if I was to write it, like given my own knowledge, like you find little things, but like overall you're like, yeah, paints a great picture. Obviously it's very like heavily tilted towards his own system, but honestly, sure, like there's no one that really has a system like he does. So it's like, you gotta, like, no one takes into account a lot of the things that he does. So and his level of detail, which you and I have, worked with him and whatnot, or interacted with him for many years, and we know that he is, like, his level of attention to detail and his obsession is kind of unmatched, and that's why he does what he does, and he's been able to make a career out of what he's doing, and without being like a guy that has like a background in mathematics or anything like that, to be kind of one of the foremost folks on advanced stats and college football and all that. So it's very impressive, and his I can't imagine, like, yeah, you're gonna write 2,000 words on Alabama, but you're also writing 2,000 words on Texas State, and you're also writing 2,000 like on whoever else,
right?
Like every Sun Belt team, you're writing 2,000 words on them.
Right. And can we just be honest? Like neither of us would want to do that.
No.
Like,
that sounds
like awful. It's not even just that he does it. It's like, who else would want to do that?
And I guarantee that, like, there's 1,000 moments every year when he's like, I don't have to do this. Because how many people read the Texas State preview? Right. And I'm sorry, Texas State, I'm harping on you, but you're one of the newest teams in Division I. That's why I do that.
Shh, you're so mean.
I know. Fine, UTSA, all those Texas teams. What is the newest team?
I'm not even sure.
I want to pick on them. Appalachian State's newer than Texas State, but Appalachian State was cool because they beat Michigan. So
yeah, they're actually pretty good.
Yeah. Newest FBS football team. So this will be the last sports thing we do. I just like that. What comes up on Google is just random. It says this is a list. It just says Boise State, and I'm like, that's not true at all.
That is clearly not accurate. But we should call them that. Newest team.
I'm just gonna Control F 2019. No one joined this year. Control F 2018. Control F 2017. All right, we got Liberty.
Ugh.
Gross. We
Gross.
should have picked on Liberty.
Yeah, that's all right. We can come back to that later.
Oh, and speaking of, well, actually, losing a team this year in the Idaho Vandals. He did not have to write an Idaho Vandals piece this year. Or was that last year? No, they were in Big Sky last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he doesn't have to write Idaho Vandals, which is probably sad for him because IDAHO or whatever. But yeah, so Jeff, we had stuff to talk about again. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought we were gonna do like a short podcast because I'm like podcasting from a hotel lobby.
Here we are. We're already 70 minutes deep.
I don't know. Let's just keep it going. I don't give a shit. We had an itinerary and we got to stick to it.
We did. What else is left?
So I had a prompt for you.
Yeah.
And so as the listeners know, I am currently visiting Indianapolis, Indiana. I've taken the last 2 days, used my hard-earned paid time off the last 2 days to be here. I am working tomorrow and Thursday, and then taking Friday off to travel to Chicago for a wedding. So took 2 days off in Indianapolis. And so what the question I had for you, and that has nothing to do with what I just said, obviously, to anyone who may be listening in this lobby. What's the least exciting city you've taken time, like your paid time off, or even unpaid time off, to like travel and like be in?
Yeah, this is hard as an adult because, well, number one, I don't travel much. Number two, if I do travel, we're usually really, really careful about, making sure we're going someplace that we actually want
worth the
to
money.
be. Yeah, that we're actually gonna want to be there. I don't know, like the one that comes to mind when I was a kid, I do remember traveling to Omaha, Nebraska for a baseball tournament. That was
not for the College World Series.
That was pretty not exciting. I will say that was pretty not exciting. Not a real exciting city.
How old were you?
I don't know. Like when I was in college, we went to.
How old were you when you went to Omaha?
I was 12. So,
Jeff,
all
were
I
you a little baller.
It was an all-star team. I was an okay baseball player when I was younger. So didn't last that long, but
how close it was like. Did you ever get close to the Little League World Series?
No, we were playing in some off-brand World Series. It was called the CABA World Series, the Continental Association of Amateur Baseball Association, something. I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, that's the one I follow. I feel like
100%. Yeah. So here's what I remember. So I was on this all-star team, and we played in an all-star tournament, which determined, further sort of national level stuff. I remember we took second place, and so first place got to go to some sort of we played in Pony League at that time. If anybody's ever heard of Pony League.
Yeah.
We played in Pony League, so I think the winner of the tournament got to go to the Pony League World Series, and then the second place was us, and they were like, sorry, you're in second place, but hey, here's this other sort of random tournament in Nebraska you can go to if you want to. So that's what we did.
I think like given that you're at 12 and I feel like just staying in a hotel is cool when you're 12.
It is. The trip was
like,
awesome.
But like just knowing at 12 that this city sucks, like it's pretty bad.
I just remember thinking like this place is like, I don't know, like not like there was no nightlife or anything, but you're just like, Seattle is really beautiful and Omaha is not beautiful. And then we also drove. So my dad grew up in Iowa, just across the border. from Nebraska. And so we actually got up one morning when we didn't have any games, and my dad drove me to these 3 tiny towns, and I do mean tiny towns that he grew up in when he was much, much younger. And the thing I remember the most about it was when people say there is corn in the Midwest. I just remember driving for hundreds of miles and not seeing really anything but corn. And just these highways that were straight, when you go into
Straight
Pullman,
and flat.
right? Yeah, straight and flat. When you go into Pullman, there is one stretch, between, Royal City and Othello that's pretty straight, right? And so it's it's just straight for a while. But it's this is for 150 miles straight. Anyway, I was this is the most boring. The landscape was boring. Everything was hot.
Yeah, coming from the Northwest, you're
yeah,
where are the mountains?
I know. 12-year-old kid. I'm this is lame, man. What the heck? So anyway, I was probably snotty, and I'd probably like it better now. So if anybody's from Omaha, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I've offended you. My 12-year-old self was not impressed. I'm sure I would be now that I'm 40 too.
What about as an adult?
I'm as an adult. Oh, like I said, that's a tough one. I'm trying to think of I don't know. I've definitely stayed in Ellensburg. Ellensburg is not very exciting.
For what reason?
Yeah. So the reason was I was there to teach at a journalism camp. So
and you weren't getting paid, or you had to take days off to do this?
No, I can't remember if I got paid or not. I don't think I did. I think it's mostly just a volunteer deal. Or maybe I did get paid a small amount, whatever it was a pretty small amount. But what you do is you go, and it's fun because you spend, 4 days in August teaching kids who really want to be there, really want to learn about journalism. And then the other thing is you get to connect with other journalism advisors. In fact, actually, it was one of the coolest things of my teaching career. I got to co-teach the course on editorial leadership with the guy who was my journalism teacher in high school. His name is Vince DeMiro, one of my heroes, one of my mentors, and a great friend even to today. He's the one who encouraged me to be a teacher. So getting to teach a class with him was honestly one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do. So but yeah,
with Omaha,
not much going on in Ellensburg. So we'll go with Omaha, although Ellensburg does have the Tav, which is a nice gathering location. And as we've mentioned before, location of Iron Horse Brewing. So anyway.
Absolutely.
What about you? You've traveled lots of places.
So, yes, I have. I've been to many, many of the major cities in the U.S. I think going international, probably the least exciting city I went to is probably Calgary, but just because it was Canada and a city of almost 1 million people, it was at least somewhat interesting. What the hell's going on up there? Why is that large of a city so far north? What the hell? And so that there was interest about that, but I gotta say, we're here in Indianapolis because my partner Amanda has a conference to go to, and I was already going to fly this week out to Chicago for a wedding, and so we were able to, the flight was roughly the same to fly in here and out of Chicago, and I was, someone had to watch the bee, so I gotta say, neither of us were very excited about this. I don't know what do I know about Indianapolis? Mostly, Wright Thompson wrote a great article about the NFL Combine, mostly the experience around it. That was my most I know. And then when John Boyce, when it was in the Super Bowl was here, he made a joke about the best restaurants in Indianapolis, and it was Applebee's and stuff like that. And so, you'd always think of Indianapolis as kind of the most basic and boring town. We're a big city in the U.S. really. Or Cleveland is up there, you're thinking of just places that wouldn't be fun to visit, and Indianapolis is definitely on the top of the list.
Pretty much all those places you're talking about are all in the Midwest.
Yeah. Just go to Chicago if you're gonna go to the Midwest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also probably us coastal elites maybe unfairly
Yeah. Coastal
ascribe
elites.
stereotypes upon people in
That's
their
right.
cities that they sometimes live up to. But anyway, so yeah, so uh, we were just not that excited. And then the experience, like the flight coming out was fine until we landed. And then, but I'll tell you what, when I was at Seattle Airport, you could tell that none of the baggage system was working. None of the conveyor belts were running. They were just like stacking bags up. Like I checked in my bag and it just piled it on to like, and I was checking in like the like the premium line, like, for like, mileage plan gold people and things like that. And there was still just like bags stacked. Like it was the longest I've ever seen that line. And we're like, why is this so long? And it's because like they were having to take so long to move the bags out. And it's just, they're having to be interrupted a lot. And so I was just like, when I handed those bags over to her, and of course I had to because I have beer in my bag, I couldn't
Right.
not check
No
it.
chance.
Yeah, and Amanda has a bag too big to check, or to carry on, so we had no choice. But so when I handed those to her, I'm just like, I had this gut feeling, like, I'm not gonna see these
Yeah,
bags
this is
when I
bad.
land. Yeah, this is not like when she has to walk through like 5 other bags to get to my bag. Like she had to come, like I couldn't set up on the conveyor belt to weigh. The weigher wasn't working. And she's like, "Oh, we're not weighing." I'm like, "Okay." And then she has to like move a bunch of bags out of the way to get to mine just to put the tags on them. And I was like, usually they hand me the receipts and I just walk away because I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's fine. They're putting the things on. It's whatever."
Right.
But this time I like watched her put the tags on the bag because I just didn't feel good about it.
Yeah.
Sure enough, we land. Um, it takes a long time for the bags to come out. Alaska has a 20-minute guarantee. Uh, it was 35 minutes. I was already on the phone with them, like, hey, it's because, it's Indianapolis. The only flight that Alaska has is a direct flight from Seattle and a direct flight back to Seattle. That's the only flights that Alaska does in Indianapolis. So they don't have a lot of staff there. And so they don't have like a baggage office or anything. And so we were just like, I remember I was on the phone with the person, with the 20-minute guarantee. I was like, "Oh, my miles, it's been over 20 minutes because you get like 2,500 miles, if you know." And so I was just like, "I want my miles." And she's like, "Well, can you confirm to me that you see the thing?" And so eventually this woman is coming around with like a pad doing the mileage, like giving us the miles. So I was like, "Oh, I just hung out with." I'm like, "Oh, there's someone here. You don't have to worry about it." So because I was sitting there watching all the bags come out with her, and then the bags stopped coming out, and there was about 40 of us. They're still sitting
Uh-huh.
there waiting.
You're all looking at each other like, shit.
Yeah, like I've seen bags stop for like a couple minutes and then come back out, but after 5-10 minutes, I was just like, "This is not. They're not here." And there was one Alaska representative left, because all the ones at the dead, they all leave after that, like about an hour after that flight. We're over an hour after the flight at this point. So she's got like 40 angry people. Uh, there was one woman who turned out to be at the conference Amanda's at. She had her kids with her, and she had checked her car seats.
Oh yeah.
And so she never had a car seat. And so
Oh
you're sitting
no.
at the airport and you have to go to your hotel downtown and you have your kid with you and you're like, what the fuck do I do? Like you just break the law. Like, I don't know if it's a law, but you just like risk it or you take the bus or whatever, and whatever. It
Right.
was not fun for her. And I was like, I'm so glad that we do like gate check with our stuff and we just carry it through the airport and then gate check it. But we just haven't had our bags until, well, y'all heard it, which
Just now.
yeah. So about what time was it? It was about 30 hours after we landed. So we had the fun job of going to the mall downtown here Not that impressive of them, honestly, but they had a Banana Republic, so Amanda could buy some work clothes, and I just bought like an outfit, even because all I had, I had like the underwear I was wearing and the clothes I was wearing, because I checked all the other ones. I was too trustworthy, and so we got to spend our first moments in Minneapolis just shopping at a mall, just horrible, you know. Like just one of my least favorite things to do ever in the entire world. Um, and but I'll give it to B. She was a trooper through the whole thing. Like we made her wait to get dinner because the mall closed at 9, and we got there. We had like basically 45 minutes to like find shit, and it always takes longer than you think it's going to. Because I went to a couple stores before I was like, I'm 6'5". Yeah, like they don't have my size and things like ever. I saw one of the guys that came in that was on my flight. He's tall as me and a little broader, like muscular. And he comes in and asks him if Banana Republic, if they have a 38 waist in anything. And I'm like, well, I've been looking at, I was looking for 36, but usually when I hit the 36, that was the last end of the road. Like, and I was just thinking, man, if I hadn't lost all this weight, I wouldn't have been able to find anything anywhere.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was our first introduction. So we already weren't that excited, and then that happens, and so we're just like, we don't even want to fucking be here. Like this is bullshit. And so we were mad. And
Yeah.
Amanda definitely is sending a big bill to Alaska for her outfit.
Yeah.
She intentionally did not look for things on sale. Like she made sure to buy things that were not on sale.
Yeah.
Like the things I bought were on sale. I just can't even though it was not my money I was spending technically. I was like, that's just too much for something I don't really want that much.
You're like, I just can't bring myself to spend that. You know what? Honestly, I will say this. So listen, you grew up as a child in fairly meager means. I think that's a fair characterization. I did not grow up in super meager means, but we were definitely bargain hunters. And then sort of in reference to the story from earlier about, Tristan and everything. Look, when you're dealing with cancer in your family, there's very little money. And so you just sort of learn to, I hear stories about, and I know a lot of these people are sort of leaving us now as they die, but Depression era people and how they kind of handled money, right? Where it's like, there are people who grew up in the Depression who never for the rest of their life would put any money in the bank, or they would at least keep a very sizable portion of it in a safe in their house, right? Because they just
or their mattress
exactly, because they didn't trust it. I think when you go through sort of financial trauma at some point, it's hard to get those habits out where it's like even today, like we're doing fine now, like I've got, I've been teaching for 15 years. I've got a master's degree. Like I do just fine for a teacher. My wife's a teacher. She's got a master's degree. We do pretty okay. And still, like, for example, if I were to go to the store, very rarely do I buy a shirt that's full price. Like I
never buy
I buy my jeans at Costco. Like I just I can't, like I have a very, like the last full price shirt I bought was actually the one I bought last week out at the Sounders match, where I bought the retro Sounders shirt. Yeah. I had not done that in I don't know how long.
That's the exception for me, is things that I think I'm not going to be able to like wait and buy.
Yeah, there's no way it's going to be on sale.
Like
right?
Even like the championship gear from like when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, when the Sounders won MLS Cup. I fucking waited like the next year. I bought it like a year later. Yeah, like you're like, maybe I didn't get the exact thing I wanted, but I know that they made too much. They always make too much of that shit. Right. And so
it's
gonna
be on clearance eventually.
Like I remember when the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl, and the first time when I was in college, I still have the hoodie, like the NFC Champions hoodie, because I didn't want like that. I didn't want like Seahawks Super Bowl. I just wanted to be like NFC champions.
Right.
But I waited for that hoodie to go down from like $60 to like $19, and then I bought it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard to
my
convince yourself
hats
you should
are,
pay
like,
full price for anything.
I
Like,
love my hats.
yeah.
I have a lot of expensive hats, technically, but like expensive, like given, because New Era hats are like with tax always like $38. So,
Yeah.
and I rarely find those on sale. So,
Exactly. But
but
it's like for the things that we know you don't have to pay full price for, it's like,
well, yeah, like I bought this, and
even if it's somebody else's money, it's
I'm
like,
wearing them. I'm wearing them right now because I had to. But even like this pair of chinos I bought from Banana Republic. I remember I caught a pair of chinos first, and I was like, oh, these will probably work. They're like $120. I'm like,
yeah.
fuck that. And so I went and I found a different table with a apparently different kind of chino, and it was like $89, but it was like 50% off. And I'm like, all right, like if I was in need of a pair of chinos, this is probably a pair that I would buy.
Yeah.
And then I just bought like the most basic like black shirt that they had, and it was like on sale, but Amanda was like in full vengeance mode. And plus, it was much more important for her. She had to buy like fucking, business clothes.
Yeah. If she's there for a conference, for sure, that matters.
And
And plus, just women in general are a little
it's
more
harder to find a
particular.
fit, and yeah.
Right. Like the fit matters. It's not like us. So
Yeah, we're just like, I don't know, it's fine, whatever.
yeah, extra large. That's my size.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you so when you travel for work stuff, do you typically spend all of your per diem?
So I've never been at a company that had just a straight up per diem.
Ooh,
Um,
really?
it's like you get this much for breakfast, this much for lunch, this much for dinner. And so what I do with dinner is I typically try to buy like the cheapest food and then fill it out with beer. But yeah, I've never worked for a place that just is like, oh, you get $100 to spend on whatever
Yeah.
today. So yeah, which I definitely would spend all the per diem if that was the case. I would do that every time. Like,
Well, your company's good. So when I traveled with SB Nation and they gave me the per diem, I still found myself like, oh, should I spend it all, or should I, get something, not necessarily smaller, but just sort of cheaper. Like there's some things like I just can't convince myself to buy like a $20 steak or whatever,
$20 steak, Jeff.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like when Sarah and I went out for our anniversary.
Yeah, there are much better steaks.
I know. When Sarah and I went out for our anniversary to Bend in December, we went to a steakhouse and I was psyching myself up before it, telling myself it's worth it. The steak is worth it. It's going to be expensive. It's okay. This is a special dinner. It's worth it. And of course it was. It was like this incredible tomahawk steak. It was absolutely, it was insane. It was so good. But at any rate, it's like, it's funny, when I would get, a per diem, I still feel weird spending other people's money. I feel like I should, be very responsible with it and not spend all of it. So
you're very responsible at the zoo and in your wing buying.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so bring it back to Indy, on the top of that. So, we were having the conversation. We're walking around like this looks like it could be any like mid-sized city in the U.S. Like there's nothing like when you're just walking around it, like there's nothing exceptional looking about it. But like to give it a little redemptions, obviously St. Elmo Steakhouse is probably the most famous thing here. We didn't go there for dinner, but I did really want to try their shrimp cocktail, which Wright Thompson wrote a lot about in his article. It's like they put a lot of horseradish in the cocktail sauce, and so it's very spicy. So we actually ended up going to dinner tonight at this burger place, which was started by the St. Elmo people, which is just a few blocks away from our hotel, and very good burgers. And they had the shrimp cocktail on the menu, so Amanda and I tried it. It's fucking good, man.
Yeah.
Like it was something you could definitely make at home. Like just
Ooh.
take a standard cocktail sauce and get like a horseradish sauce and mix them together, and like you could do at home. But like it was fucking good. Like it was definitely like clear your nose out. Now like I mean if you're not used to the horseradish spice, like it probably could be a bit much. Like if you don't like horseradish, like you wouldn't like it. But if you're used to horseradish and it's not overbearing and it's phenomenal. It definitely gives you a little nasal cleansing, but like it was excellent. And I'm glad I didn't have to spend $60 on a steak to buy the $15 shrimp cocktail. But um, yeah, so because Amanda's budget is more limited for this conference, so she can't just go take us out to a steak restaurant. She's only expensing her meal and not mine and B's. But I've been with a friend before who worked for a game company, and just we happened to be traveling at the same time, and he's a beer nerd friend, and we were going to like breweries together, and he was just like, oh, I'm paying for everything, I'll expense it, like everything we're doing. He was like buying beer to go. He was buying beer for he was buying meals for me and like other friends he had, and he was expensing that. I'm like, that's a whole different level. But anyway, so
That's living the dream right there.
that's living the dream, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, so and then of course, as I alluded to, Indianapolis has the largest children's museum in the world. And I took today off to take my daughter up there. We spent 6 hours there.
What?
Yeah.
That's a long time.
And that is going from thing to thing. There was a 1 hour nap in between there. So 5 hours of doing stuff. They have a dinosaur exhibit. We started with that. That's right at the front. And then we went to like other exhibits. They have space station exhibit. They have a glass exhibit from Dale Chihuly from Tacoma.
Ah.
So, Museum of Glass in Tacoma is because Dale Chihuly. But yeah, so we just, we went to a bunch of different exhibits. They have this sports section. So they have like basketball and soccer and golf and football. So B played some basketball, she played some soccer.
Nice.
She played some golf for the first time through her club down in Anguish. So I think she has a future. But yeah,
I'm sure she does.
Yeah.
She definitely does.
But then we went to the, one of the things I saved for the late afternoon, it was the area that was specifically made for kids 5 and under. And then within that, they had an area that was made for like toddlers and below. And B just had a blast there. Like everything was her size, and she could figure it out based on your 19-month-old intellect.
Yep.
And so so that was, she just had a blast, and there was another space where it was just under 9 months, and so she could look over there and be like, oh, babies. It was funny, like she knew she was bigger than them, and because we did a few other things where there was a bunch of much older kids, and you could tell she was very intimidated, but she like it was great, man. Like they have rotating exhibits, like they have an ancient Greek exhibit that we had to pay extra for, so we didn't, because honestly there was enough stuff to do there. I was like, I'm not gonna add on this other thing, but along with that, they had this like whole exhibit about life in Greece and stuff, which was very well done. I was so impressed. Like, to teach kids about life in a different country and not have it be like based on caricatures and things like that. Like, it was very impressive. Like, so go Indianapolis, fucking kick-ass children's museum that I spent 6 hours at today.
And it's like, it's actually
which
exhausting.
I've never spent. Like, I've went to some amazing museums, like in New York and London and Paris and whatever, and I don't think I've ever spent 6 hours in a single museum until today.
No. But with your kids, it's like, a good children's museum is worth its weight in gold.
Oh, absolutely.
We used to have a membership down at the Hands-On Children's Museum in Olympia, which is
Which
a
is way better
fantastic
than the one in
place.
Tacoma.
Oh yeah, yeah. The one in Tacoma is like whatever. Like it's fine for like an hour, you know. The Hands-On Children's Museum in Olympia is pretty fantastic. And which should tell you something because we used to have a membership and we live in Graham. So it's it's an hour
still gotta
drive.
drive an
So
hour, yeah.
it's an hour drive or so to get down there. We did let it lapse mostly just because it's not that we weren't using it. We just sort of like, it just sort of happened and then we didn't react. But
One of your kids is 12. Probably
yeah,
doesn't
that's
really-
the other thing. So when they were a
The
couple
other
of years,
kids are heading that way. So
yeah, when they were all three in that zone, it made a lot of sense. The 12-year-old kind of, but it is great. Like the really good ones, they stimulate your kid's brain. They stimulate them physically, intellectually, give them lots of things to do. And you could spend hours and hours and hours there. And actually the hard part isn't the kids spending all those hours there. It's you, because you have to like watch them and
you have to
follow
like be
them. You're just,
interested.
like standing
this.
around and you're like, and then the kid wants you to like, hey, do this thing with me. And you're like, I don't really want to. It's a children's museum,
Yeah.
that's for you.
Yeah, that's what I thought that was great about today. Like, and we didn't even go to everything in this museum. And I'm with a 19-month-old, so she wasn't that interested in anything for that long. And we were still there for 6 hours. And I had never in the Paw Patrol area, I was like, I'm ready to get out of here. Also, it was the end of the day.
Yeah.
Mostly I don't know anything about Paw Patrol, and Bea is not watching that yet. And
Oh, it's coming.
yeah,
Just
I know.
wait.
But it's like dogs, and she loves dogs, so
Yeah.
the little dog characters that
Oh,
they
yeah.
have, stoked about that. So yeah, it's whatever, like I was so impressed with it. I mean, because Bee's under 2, I didn't have to pay for her. So it was like $26 for me to get in, and apparently if I would have bought it like weeks ago, it would have been cheaper. But that was a fucking great $26 I spent. My daughter had probably one of the best days of her life.
Oh,
She
yeah.
didn't know, but like
Got
she was
1,000
just,
pictures.
you know,
Or smiling.
literally because mom wasn't there, so I had to
Send pictures to mom.
yeah, that was because when B took a nap, thankfully it was right when I needed to charge my phone, so we could like take an Uber home and I could take pictures for the next 2 hours. Yeah, it was great because she got to have pizza for lunch, which is her favorite thing. She calls it Zappy because she's an idiot apparently.
I love it.
But she had pizza for lunch, and it was not very good pizza, but she doesn't know that. I learned that I think she's definitely like a just plain cheese pizza lover at this point because she was taking the pepperoni off of it and handed it to me.
Here, I'll share with you, Dad.
Yeah, here, Dad, have this thing I don't like.
Yes,
But
I always
she's
love it when
always
kids. Yeah, did she shove it in your mouth? Because that's what my kids do. They're like,
she does
here,
that.
and they try to shove it in my
She
mouth.
thinks it's
and I'm
really
like,
funny, but she thinks it's funny to hand it
really
to you
want
and
that.
pull it away. She thinks it's really funny to pull it away.
that is pretty funny to be honest.
Side note, when we were at the burger place, I had tater tots and she had fries. The fries were actually better. She made the better choice. But I was letting her eat my tater tots because the burger was pretty filling. It had this like super thick bacon, delicious bacon on it.
Yeah.
But she was eating half of each tater tot and then putting it back. And then she has learned now she's obviously turned a corner on loving ketchup. She was taking the fries, dipping them, sucking ketchup off, and then once those were getting too flimsy, she would switch to another fry. So I think she likes ketchup more than French fries now, which French fries were her previous favorite food,
Ooh.
which we would give her on special days so that she would know that today was a great day, like today. And she was just like sucking the ketchup off French fries and then tossing them to the side. Like she would use the fry like 6 or 7 dips into the ketchup, and then it would break, like break off, and then she'd like put it back on the plate and grab another one. Anyways, this is not good podcast content. But,
no, it's funny. Like it
is funny.
Kids have their little quirks, and what's one of the fun things is just sort of watching them grow up through that.
Yeah.
where, they change. And, so I'm happy to report that since my youngest is 7, my kids no longer shove food in my mouth. That's it's a thing they don't do anymore. But when they're 2, you're like, because I at least I assume that this is what happens. You spend time putting food in their mouth, and so they think, oh, I'm going to be very nice and put food in your mouth. And
Yeah.
it's like,
That's where she gets it from.
I don't really want you to do
Yeah,
that.
she thinks she's being nice and like
You're
sharing.
not being nice. I do not want you to shove that food that's been in
We
your
just have to
grubby hand.
politely be like, no, thank you.
No, thank you. That's for you.
Yeah. You're like, but Dad, you just ate the other one. No, but
No,
that one I don't want.
that's okay. Yeah, but anyway, if you've got small kids and you've never taken them to a good children's museum, I promise
It's worth it.
it's totally worth it. You will not just buy the damn membership
Yeah, I
if it's
used
within
one
a
of my
reasonable
days
drive.
off because I was just gonna work today, and then one of our friends who lives in Bloomington, and we're gonna have dinner with tomorrow. She told us that like the Indianapolis Children's Museum is amazing, so
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I could do like I was like, nah, like I'll just take a full day, and I'm glad I did because
You gonna go get while you're there? You gonna go take a tour of Assembly Hall or anything like that?
I've been to Assembly Hall.
Oh, that's right.
I've been to a
Forgot
game
about
at
that.
Assembly
Yes,
Hall.
you have. I forget. We'll have to reminisce
Well, only
about that
because it's an
another
hour
time.
away too, and we don't have a car. I'm not gonna take a tour of. I wouldn't have done that, but yes, I've been to a game at
I
Assembly.
forgot. That's right. You used to live out in that part of the country, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. It was like I was like,
Yeah,
and we have
yeah,
friends that live there. The friends that are coming to have dinner with us tomorrow. So,
yeah. There you go.
yeah. Anyways, all right, man. I think
Yeah.
I think we
I think
did
we're
a
there.
good job on this podcast. I think we're so great.
We are. We're
and we
awesome.
don't care if you think that we're not. But if you do
because we
think
know we're awesome.
But if you do think we're great, please subscribe and give us 5 stars on whatever service that you have subscribed to us on. I would love that. If you have any funny comments to leave, we would love that as well, because I like reading them. And if you want to have a comment, a question, a disagreement, preferably, podcastversuseveryone@gmail.com. That's versus as VS, not like versus spelled out like that old TV channel that Connor Holiday threw for 450 yards against Arizona State on one time. Also, you can contact us on Twitter at podversuseveryone, and then for me at the Craig Powers. I think that's all the contact spots. But yeah, Jeff, good job. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.